This presentation is a discussion of EMET, which stands for Enhanced Migration Experience Toolkit and Database. This presentation was made by Christopher Hill for ISA 4220 Server System Security. Thank you. On this slide, I'll be discussing EMET. So EMET stands for Enhanced Migration Experience Toolkit. It's a freeware security toolkit for Microsoft Windows. So the introduction of technology in businesses has brought a huge change in business and customer care. From a standalone processing to the client and server processing, this advanced technology rise threats in technology. Thus, it creates threats in businesses. So these threats are threats with many types of security resources that operate at different level of OSI reference model. EMET comes to harden the security in different ways. It's a Microsoft security tool. It defends the operating systems against a new way of intruders, attackers. These attacks cannot get blocked by any antivirus or firewalls. So any attacks, any big attacks that can get into your system, EMET will try to stop it. So EMET is more powerful than an antivirus or firewall. So EMET is targeted mostly at sysadmins, but the newest version is supported for any Windows user running Windows Vista with Service Pack 2. Enhanced Migration Experience Tools is free tools that is compatible with most operating systems and is recommended by Microsoft to be installed on business operating system, both clients or server system. On this slide, I'll be discussing database. So database is one of the most important tools used by enterprises. It saves enterprises to save their records on books, then store all the books after it is full. Database is a system that has the capability to store data and organize the data using different parameters. Database has rows and columns that store data in different formats. So basically, these rows and columns are gathered in an entity called tables, and these tables are interconnected. Tables are interconnected. Interconnected tables are called relational database. So basically, tables can be connected through foreign keys and primary keys. So each table has a primary key, and when it's connected to a different table, when a different table uses that primary key, it's called foreign keys. So with a database, we can have multiple tables. We can have infinite number of tables, and in each table we can have columns uh, and rows. So the rows, the data are inserted into the rows. So the columns are created by the admins. So this way, companies can use the database to show all the data in the server. Relational database management system has the capability to maintain data integrity, eliminate data redundancy, and data dependency. A specific language is used to interact with the database system. This language is called SQL. SQL allows to make operation on the database. SQL stands for Structure Query Language. So using SQL, we can retrieve the data from the database. So the data is stored into the database, but to get that data, you have to use SQL to get the data out from the database, and you have to use SQL to create tables, columns, foreign key, primary keys, and so on. So SQL is the language you use for database. So without SQL, you can't operate a database. On this slide, I'll be discussing the best practices on EMET. So Microsoft Enhanced Migration Experience Toolkit is a new form of defense from Microsoft against a new form of attacks. So basically, Microsoft came up with a new tool to help us to prevent attackers get into our servers and computers. So since hackers come up with new ways, they always come up with new ways to get into computers. Microsoft created this tool to specifically fight that. So with Emmet is really, it's a very good solution made by Microsoft to prevent attackers getting into our systems. So it's a really good tool to use as a system administrator. Attackers use their imagination to get into a remote system using several techniques. So this is why you always need to come up with new systems to fight hackers or attackers to get into your system. To protect an operating system, it is important to know how the system operates. So you have to really understand how your server works. What are the different options you have? Uh, what did you uh, what did you set on? Like what services are running on the server? You need to know all these different uh, settings before you can protect yourself. So this is really important as a system admin. What is the weakness of that system? So you need to know what is the weakness of your server or your system. Uh, what you're not doing right. Like, what didn't you set up? Did you set up? Do you have firewall on? Do you have antivirus? Do you have EMET? Do you have different systems to protect your server? Also, you need to know which programs are necessary for the use on that system. Most of the time when you have too many things running into your server, so many solutions running in your server, it's really hard to maintain it. So usually it's really easy, it's easier to maintain a system when you know exactly what you're using. So if you have 100 softwares running or 100 services running on the server, and it's more complicated. It's harder to maintain that server. So the fewer services you have, the better it is. So this is why it's really important to make sure you're only running the necessary services or software on your server. The unnecessary one you can just disable them or uninstall them from your system. Otherwise, it's just gonna get complicated, and hackers can get into your system using those unused services or softwares. And lastly, you need to know which program can harm the system. So you need to look at all the softwares, make sure they're all, they're using the right ports, they're using the right username. So you have to make sure you know very well the software or the programs you install into your server. On this slide, I'll be discussing the best practices for database. A relational database management system has a representation of business operation. Information is created, inserted, updated, deleted, and referenced. All these operations are processed within my data integrity, redundancy, avoidance, performance, security, and availability. Because when you have a server, when you have a database on your server, and your database doesn't have these six different operations in mind, your database is not right. Because you need to make sure your database uh, is always available. So your customers can get their data anytime or can insert their data anytime. So availability is very important. Security, you need to make sure the data is secure. No one can get it into your server and get get the database, your information from your database. So that's really important. Performance, because when the database doesn't perform very well, user can get into the database or retrieve the data, or they can either insert the data. So performance is really important. Redundancy avoidance, you don't want to have the same information multiple times, because that's just going to increase your search, and and it's going to be really complicated for user to get the data, because they're gonna get multiple records instead of just having one record. For example, data integrity. So you need to make sure that the data is safe. There's no you know there's no way you can lose that the data, like you're not you always have a backup of the data. So that's really important. Data integrity is really important. You need to make, because users or your customers need to make sure the data is always there. There's no chance of losing that data. A database must be consistent. That consistency is obtained during the database analysis and design. The analysis is one of the most important phase of database creation. Gather the maximum information before starting the database designing analysis. The database server must be very performant in many parts. Good processing capability, a very fast memory and hard drive operation capability, a network interface card with high capacity, a RAID with priority strategy must be configured on the server to maintain the database availability. On this slide, I'll be discussing server hardening for EMET. Security is a framework with different sides. Only one tool cannot guarantee the security of a system. Yeah. Because there is no perfect tools. So by just using antivirus, let's say, you can block intruders. So you need to use firewalls, antiviruses, and tools like EMET. Because just one tool, there's no perfect tool. There's not one tool that can block all the intruders, that can block anything. There's no perfect tool. So there's always you need to always the tools always complement themselves. So you need to use multiple tools to protect yourself against intruders or hackers. So security becomes strong if it is designed on a security strategy policy of an enterprise. Microsoft Enhanced Migration Experience Toolkit protect the system by checking application operation and the system memory. EMET must be configured within mind the compatibility with system application in order to avoid any internal conflict or memory execution error. Microsoft Enhanced Migration Experience Toolkit must be configured in conjunction with security tool and resources, you know, like antiviruses, firewalls, and user security awareness, patch, system update, and antivirus update must be maintained because EMET can only work by itself. So they need to work with conjunctions with all these systems. On this slide, I'll be discussing server hardening for databases. The importance of a database server in any enterprise makes the server to be well secured. The data manipulation is done by several users from different resources to the server. These operations need to be checked before making any interaction with the database. Analysis and implementation phase must be conducted very well. Rule, constraints, triggers, and short procedure must be used. Because otherwise, if you have too many rules, if you have too many of these, you're gonna slow down your database. So you need to make sure you're only running the used one. The unused one you can disable them or remove them from the database. Also, the client-side application must be well designed for data insertion, update, or delete. Database connectors, network port, and application programming interface must be checked to avoid any error. Also, an administration level must be defined to user that has in charge the server administration. Because you can't let any your developers have admin rights. So only the system admins need to have admin rights. So there is no so your server is well protected. So you need to make sure you're giving uh, uh, the right access to specific users. And lastly, antiviruses and intrusion detection have to be configured on the server.